Tradescantias make great houseplants and they're very popular because they come in all sorts of exciting fun colours, and they're also really fast growers and easy to care for too, if you know what they like. So in today's video I'm going to share with you my top tips for caring for your Tradescantias. The first thing we'll talk about is what kind of soil should you put your Tradescantia in, and to be honest with you, these plants aren't that fussy about what type of soil you put them in. They pretty much grow in kind of any standard houseplant mix. Now I do like to mix a bit of Coco Coir with some Perlite added in and a little bit of Orchid bark too, just to give it some extra drainage, because even though they want their soil to stay fairly moist, you don't want it to get waterlogged, so I would recommend having a little bit of drainage in there, but also something that retains a little bit of moisture. So next let's talk about light. With Tradescantias it's really easy, they just like bright indirect light. That just means don't put them in a dark spot and don't put them in a place where they're going to get real direct sunlight on their leaves, because they could scorch. And I actually have an example here for you. This one has had too much sunlight, and can you see how the leaves have become faded? They kind of look a bit bleached out. That's what can happen if you give your Tradescantia too much sun. So you do need to kind of be a little bit careful about making sure they don't get too much direct sun. I definitely recommend having them behind a sheer curtain or next to a window that doesn't get really strong direct sun. But equally though, you definitely don't want to put Tradescantias in a dark spot, because they do require bright indirect light, especially in order to keep their colour. Some species, such as this one, this is the Perlite Purple Heart, it will start to go green if it doesn't get enough light, so it's just about striking a balance really. But if you just remember, make sure that no absolute direct sun is hitting it, and also make sure that it's not in a dark spot. Just somewhere kind of medium bright indirect light will be perfect for these. When it comes to watering, it's quite important to keep these consistently moist. Now, when I say moist, you definitely have to be careful about overwatering, because as with all plants, if you overwater these, they are of course vulnerable to root rot. So if you have a little bit of those drainage materials in the soil, like I mentioned before, a bit of perlite, a little bit of orchid bark, that will help. But what I tend to do with mine is I will let kind of the top couple of inches dry out, but I don't let the whole pot dry out. I let the very lower part of the pot stay moist, and that's how I try to water my Tradescantias. I say try because of course there's always going to be times when we forget, or we're doing something, we've gone on holiday, whatever it might be, and it dries out a bit too much. Now if that happens, in my experience, the Tradescantia won't die, but it will get some crisping of the leaves and you will get browning. So I would recommend, yeah, just letting the kind of top couple of inches dry out and then watering it through. And that seems to work out for me. But another really important tip when it comes to watering is that during the winter and summer, it's going to be a little bit different. So in this kind of spring, summer time when the temperature's hotter, it's very hot today actually, the soil of your plant is going to dry out much faster, so it is going to require watering more often. So just be aware of that, because in the winter months I'd recommend just pulling back the water a little bit, because with it being colder and with the plants possibly not growing as much during the colder months, you're going to need to water less often. So definitely be aware of that, because winter is often the time when we accidentally overwater our plants because we don't change the frequency at which we water, and yeah, we accidentally end up with root rot. So do be aware of that. Watering definitely changes with the seasons. So when it comes to fertiliser, I fertilise these with a liquid houseplant fertiliser, and I just use it as directed on the back, which says to use it every couple of weeks. That's pretty much what I do with these. I give it a liquid fertiliser every couple of weeks, Only during the growing season though. During the winter months when the plants are not growing, I don't fertilise in that case because I could over fertilise them. They're not using the nutrients during that time because they're not growing. So I'd say if your plant is growing, fertilise it every couple of weeks, but definitely dial it back if your plant has stopped growing due to the temperature dropping in winter. So next let's talk about pests. Obviously Tradescantias are prone to pests in the same way that any other plant could. If you've got pests around, then they most likely could get on your Tradescantia, of course. I've personally never had pests on my Tradescantia, touch wood. That doesn't mean I won't though. When it comes to pest management, being vigilant and preventing pests in the first place is key. Just make sure you keep checking the plant on a regular basis. So it really matters with a pest infestation when you catch it. So the best course of action is to just check your plant. I usually just check mine. I have a look on the backs of the leaves, the fronts of the leaves. I look for any damage that potentially could be caused by pests that I can't see. And I just do that pretty much every time I water. I have a quick check through. And so the sooner you catch it, the better really, and then you can treat it. But yeah, touch wood, I've never actually had pests on my Tradescantia, but I would definitely be vigilant and keep your eyes open for them because of course they can get all the same pests that other plants can get. So another thing that a lot of people struggle with Tradescantia is, and in fact I have an example here, they eventually get a bit leggy like this and they don't look so full anymore, they look a bit sad and they start losing their leaves. You can see there are brown leaves in here, and so these are definitely plants that need regular pruning. You'll have to go around and regularly take out these brown leaves, and that's just something you have to put up with Tradescantias. It really is just how their cycle is, how their natural cycle is. Even if you manage to keep up with watering, in my experience, they still get those brown crispy leaves. So if you're getting brown crispy leaves, just remove them, prune your plant on a regular basis and know that this is just what Tradescantias do. And when they get leggy like this and they start to look a bit untidy and unattractive, that's also something that Tradescantias do. So if you have one like this, there's a really simple solution. All you need to do is basically chop the plant. You can just chop off the vines and remove some of the lower leaves, and you can either propagate it straight into soil by pushing it into soil. If you do it that way, just keep that soil moist until you've got roots, and then you can also propagate in water too. Just put your cuttings in water and then plant them up when they root. But this is what Tradescantia people do basically to put up with this legginess that always happens. You just have to chop and prop them on a regular basis. Some people even like to kind of chop off these leggy bits and put them straight back into the pot too, and then you can get a fuller plant. But yeah, this is an example of a Tradescantia that's maybe not in its heyday. They do eventually get like this, and yeah, you just have to do a bit of maintenance. Chopping and propping is really your only choice. The more plants you add back into the pot, the fuller a plant you'll get. It's also okay to just completely start again and just put them in a new pot if you want. Just chop it right back, because the great thing about Tradescantias is when you chop them right back, they grow really fast. I would definitely recommend doing this in spring, summer, because then they will take quicker, they will root quicker, and they will grow back quicker too. So definitely do that. If you're a bit scared to chop your Tradescantia, don't be scared. They propagate really easily and also they grow back really fast, especially in this heat. And so I did just touch on pruning as well, but I'll just show you again. You can see that there's brown crispy leaves in here, and this is something you'll have to do a lot with your Tradescantia, is you'll have to prune out these leaves, and you can just pinch them out. I've just accidentally pulled a bit off. See that bit I've pulled off there? I could just put that into water or soil and propagate it, or I could just pop it straight back in. Yeah, but you will need to regularly prune your Tradescantias. They do just get messy, they get brown leaves, and it's just something you have to do maintenance-wise. You will notice that Tradescantias come in lots of different varieties, lots of different colours, and it's kind of fun to collect them. In my experience, the care for all of them is pretty much the same. I haven't really found a Tradescantia that differs from the information I've just given you, but if you have some varieties that I don't and you think there are some further tips we could all use, do leave them in the comments. And yeah, if you have any more Tradescantia tips, I'm definitely not the oracle on Tradescantias. I'm just going on my personal experience because I've been kind of keeping this kind of plant on and off for the last couple of years. And yeah, when I first started keeping them, I was put off a little bit by the fact that they get very straggly, but eventually I learned that you just have to give them a bit of maintenance. You know, usually once or twice a year, I would recommend chop and prop your plant. You will not regret it. Yeah, that's the way to keep the life cycle of a Tradescantia going. So don't be hard on yourself if you have a Tradescantia currently that is looking a bit leggy and a bit messy. It happens to us all. So this is a good example of a Tradescantia I've only just bought. This one is kind of brand new and looking lovely, but eventually it will get leggy and I will come to the point where I have to chop and prop it. There's also a really great opportunity there to, of course, share plants with your friends and family if you have too many, because let me tell you, they do propagate very fast. So they're a really good plant for sharing as well if you'd like to take some cuttings for your friends and family. So finally, I'd say to summarise, the best thing about Tradescantias is they're pretty cheap to get and they grow really fast. So if you're buying a Tradescantia, always try and look for a healthy plant, but just know that if you buy a fairly small one, it's probably going to grow fast. But even if you want to buy a plant that's large, they do tend to be fairly cheap actually, and also quite readily available in nurseries. So yeah, just have fun, experiment. Don't worry if you kill a few, it's fine, that's how we learn. I've certainly lost my fair share in my time. That's how I've learned these care tips really, is just by trial and error. And if you've had a few failures, don't worry about it, have another go. You never know, next time you might do better, especially with these tips. I hope you did find these tips helpful. If you did, maybe give the video a thumbs up, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.